Hi class. Today we're here to talk about chapter 11, which is related to the self. I'm going to try to do the best I can. I've got my two dogs in here with me, so hopefully they don't make any noise and you won't be able to hear them at all. So let's go ahead and get started for our chapter today. Now, you may have heard about the self. You may have actually kind of touched on this, especially if you've taken social psychology. So some of this may not be completely new for you. But I do want to go over some of the basics, and in this section we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that self-understanding. So when we think about research related to the self, we actually need to understand that there are many components. When we ask a person, who am I? There are lots of different aspects of that question. And this comes down to things like the definition of the self. The self, as per your text, is defined as all characteristics of the person. But this also includes things like self-understanding, self-esteem, self-concept. Our identity then is going to be who we are and kind of that representation of our understanding of who we are. And then we've got personality, and these are going to be these enduring personal characteristics. This will be individually based. Each of us have slightly different personalities. While we don't discuss it so much in this class, if you were to take kind of a personality, psychology of personality class, you'll get into this a little bit more. And personality can be thought of as aspects of ourselves that remain stable, but we also have aspects of our personality that may have fluctuations as well. So one of the big sort of pivotal aspects of that development that we see in regards to the self is really that self-recognition. So understanding who we are. The best way that we can explain this is, if I put you in front of a mirror, or you're walking by a mirror and, you see kind of this white speckle in your hair. Most people, as soon as they look in the mirror, they'll start doing this to their hair. They're not doing it to the mirror. They recognize that that's a reflection of who they are, which essentially means that that person also understands who they are, right? This is a reflection of me. And so we use a very similar type of test to see if children and even some animals have that self-recognition. We do this using something called the Rouge test. So we actually, the initial test itself used to put actually just a dab of rouge on a little child's nose and put them in front of a mirror and see if they would wipe off that smear. Interestingly, children who had not developed that self-regulation or self-recognition yet were unable to. They would kind of just stare at themselves in the mirror, but they weren't able to understand that was them. That was a reflection of them. So this doesn't emerge until close to the second year of life. Usually around 1.5 to 2 years is when we see it. So around like 18 months or so is when you'll probably see this self-recognition sort of coming into full force. Only after we have that self-recognition are we able to develop what we call secondary emotions, things like embarrassment. Right? This doesn't happen until we can understand, when I look at myself in the mirror, that is a reflection of me. That is me. I can recognize myself. I want to show you a clip really quickly that sort of highlights this self-recognition. What's really interesting about this is we assumed that only human beings were capable of self-recognition, that animals could not do this. So I want to show this to you. We've actually found that dolphins and even elephants are able to engage in self-recognition. So let's go ahead and watch this video quickly.
Spend a day with a dolphin and you're quickly reminded of why they've always captured our imaginations. They are playful, sociable, and just incredibly fun to be around. But scientists say there's a lot more to these animals, and they're just beginning to understand the intricate thinking of these so-called big brain mammals.
Here you go, Nani. Good girl. We came here to the Baltimore Aquarium to see just how intelligent dolphins are. You see them playing with their trainers all the time, but scientists who study them say there's a lot more happening there than just play, that their intelligence actually rivals ours. Here you go.
To see up close what has scientists so excited, we climb down into a tiny underwater lab with a window into the aquarium, where scientist Diana Reese puts a two-way mirror up against the glass. The dolphins can't see us, but Reese can study how the dolphins react to the mirror.
We used to think we were the only species on the planet that could think, and now we know that we're amongst many thinking species. So the questions are no longer, can they think, but how do they think? And what's amazing is, in this capacity, with giving them mirrors, it looks like they're doing a lot of things very similar to us.
Reese has been studying dolphins' behavior for 25 years.
Most animals don't even pay attention to mirrors. So if you put a mirror in front of your dog, most dogs won't even look in a mirror. Cats don't pay much attention. Other animals do pay attention, but never figure out it's themselves. They think it's another of their own kind.
But dolphins do figure it out.
And not only do they figure out that it's them, but they show interest to look at themselves. So one thing is to understand it's themselves. It's a whole other thing to say, I want to look at myself. I want to look and see what my face looks like. Or what does it look like when I turn upside down and blow a bubble?
We sat in awe as this group of dolphins explored themselves before us, unable to ignore the mirror. Several did hang upside down.
He's upside down. He keeps on doing it. He's going to get wild now. He's being very innovative. Watch this. Big show.
Other dolphins opened their mouth and stuck their tongue out. They put their eye on the mirror to get an even closer look. Not convinced a dolphin can recognize itself in the mirror? Take a look at this video of an earlier experiment from 2001. Scientists marked this dolphin on the side with a black pen, but did not mark the other. When released, the dolphin with the mark swims directly to the mirror and turns the mark towards the mirror, like he's trying to take a look at what's been done to him. The unmarked dolphin doesn't show the same behavior. Dolphins aren't the only big brain mammals who recognize themselves. Elephants do too. Watch what happens when Reese tested them at the Bronx Zoo. This one, with a white X marked on his face, turns toward the mirror, over and over, to take a look. Back at the Baltimore Aquarium, Reese is now focusing her research on younger dolphins.
Bo is 5.
Just like human children, younger dolphins make lots of movements and watch their reflection. They quickly learn they are watching themselves.
What are you trying to figure out with the younger dolphins?
So we're trying to figure out when, at what age, at what developmental age, do they start figuring out that it's them in the mirror, and when are they showing interest in the mirror?
Foster, who is 3, started recognizing himself in the mirror about the same time toddlers do, when he was about 1.5 years. Reese says some dolphins pick up on it at just 6 months, much earlier than children.
This is Spirit. Now Spirit's testing. She's still figuring this out. And what's funny is we recognize this because it's so similar to what kids do, what chimps do. I mean, it's amazing. And they go through the same stages. These are animals that have been separated from us from 95 million years of evolution. Big brains processing things in similar ways.
With a mirror providing a window into the dolphins' minds, Reese believes she is discovering that their super high levels of intelligence are in many ways much like our own. And if that's true, the question is, what does that tell us?
In the end, what this tells us is that we need to look at these animals in a new light, with a new respect, and really provide much more protection in terms of conservation efforts and welfare efforts for these animals. And also appreciate that we're not at the top anymore. We're not alone. We're surrounded by other intelligences.
Oh, wow. So smooth. That's beautiful.
Remember the old saying that it always seems like dolphins are smiling at you? Well, maybe they are. Randy Kay, CNN, Baltimore.
All right. So I think this really is a very interesting idea that our self, this understanding, the self-recognition, might not simply be something that we only see in humans, but actually in animals as well. It gives us a really new perspective when we sort of think through our contributions to this world, and maybe, this idea of, are we really at the top in terms of intelligence? Okay, so sort of moving along here, I want to highlight for you this development of self-understanding in children. So in infancy, we're sort of starting, we don't really know. If you take a baby and you stick a baby in front of a mirror, they're not going to have that same self-recognition. So self-recognition is going to begin around 18 months. That's when we're going to start to see that. Now, some kids might experience this a little bit earlier, some a little bit later, but the idea is around 18 months is where we will see this. And when we get into early childhood, children are able to sort of understand and conceive their self, and also conceive themselves in terms of different parts of their body as well. And so they can describe themselves in very physical terms, right? And this is happening as we get into that early childhood. When we move into that middle or late childhood, there tends to be a much more complex understanding of the self. So now we recognize that we've got lots of different characteristics, our physical characteristics, but now we also have things like our internal characteristics. These might be different. How do you feel? Our social aspects. And also, we're starting to engage in social comparison. So you ask a child in early childhood, are you very fast? They'll say, yes, of course, I'm extremely fast. I can go from here to there, and I can run. But when you get into middle childhood, now you say, well, are you fast? Well, I'm faster than Bobby, but I'm slower than Mary. And so you're able to recognize where you are in comparison to your peers. And this is a really big developmental milestone. All right, so your book then moves on to talking about self-esteem and the self-concept. So self-esteem is related to who we are, and this includes things like our self-worth, our self-image, that sort of global evaluation of who we are. Our self-concept is going to be domain specific. So, I might be, I might take a look at myself in a particular domain. For example, based on my profession or my job. Maybe you think about yourself as a student or, as a husband or a wife or a mother or a father, right? So it is related to a specific domain. Our self-esteem, how we view ourselves in a particular domain. So our self-concept can actually influence our self-esteem. And it's really sort of important to understand that. We do tend to have developmental kind of changes in our self-esteem. And again, something to take a look at. One thing is, we want to build self-esteem, but we want to do so in very productive ways. So just simply providing praise for the sake of praise to a child will have an increase in self-esteem, but is that really a good thing? And, in general, people develop self-esteem in really healthy ways. So taking a look at my self-concept, I take a look at a domain, see how I stack up in that domain, but it should be a domain that I value. And if I value that domain, that actually naturally influences my self-esteem. So this idea of everyone's a winner, right? Everyone deserves a trophy can actually backfire and cause some really negative outcomes in terms of our development of self-esteem. If we give somebody too much self-esteem, we can have a negative effect. Things like narcissism can develop as a result of that. As we move into adulthood or older adulthood, we're better able to regulate our emotions. We are, we can look at ourselves. We know kind of what domains we have that are of value to us. But we also can compare ourselves to others. And if this is done in a way that isn't self-deprecating, it can actually be positive, right? So we see, okay, you know what, I'm not the best, but I'm not bad. I'm pretty okay at this. I do a good job here. And so one of the things that, of course, we want to talk about is how do we increase that self-esteem? What does that really look like? We want people to have healthy self-esteems. And so some ways that we can do that is by identifying areas or identifying what's causing that low self-esteem and helping channel particularly our young children to look into domains that they do excel at, and then they can derive that positive self-esteem from. If we are able to do that, we can naturally build some self-confidence, and that's going to then translate to, this forming of really positive self-esteem. All right, so these are a couple of, big concepts in this chapter. We still have others, things like self-regulation, as well, as that I would encourage you to take a look at. The notes are quite extensive regarding this. And then your book sort of ends with talking about identity. So how do we form those identities of who we are? As always, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Feel free to get in touch with me during office hours or the like. I'm here to help answer any of those questions. All right, have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon. Bye.